Hello, welcome to this update for the tropics and also the severe weather in parts of the US and Canada. So let's see here first what's happening in the tropics and then the severe weather. So there's Invest 91L near the southern Gulf in the Bay of Campeche, and it passed over the Yucatan and Central America last night. And throughout the day today, it has been growing in formation probabilities. So let's see what might happen. Recent surface observation satellite imagery and radar data from Mexico suggest a well-defined surface circulation is developing with the area of low pressure in the Bay of Campeche near the Mexican coastline. And this is new information here because it just got upgraded to 70%. In addition, shower thunderstorm activity is starting to show signs of organization. If these trends continue, tropical depression is likely to form possibly as soon as this afternoon in the Bay of Campeche, and this is forecast to keep continue moving west-northwestward this weekend across eastern Mexico, notably moving inland into Mexico by Monday. An Air Force reserved Hurricane Hunter aircraft is en route to investigate the system, and interest in east southeastern Mexico to monitor the progress of the system. Tropical storm watches or warnings could be required for parts of the Mexican coast as soon as this afternoon. So what I think will happen, they might put this as a potential tropical cyclone first to issue the tropical storm watches, but we'll see what happens. But regardless, locally heavy rains are ongoing. Portions of Guatemala and southeastern Mexico will continue next few days. So stay safe in those areas for heavy rain and everything, especially some flash flooding and those areas of Mexico there. So here in the Eastern Pacific, there's this area as well. Invest 95E. So showers and thunderstorms, such a broad area of low pressure, okay, a few hundred miles southwest of the Golfo temperate continue to show signs of organization. Environmental conditions appear conducive for development. A tropical depression is expected to form during the next day or so, where the system moves slowly west-northwestward off the coast of southern Mexico. Potential cyclone advisories could be initiated later today. For additional information regarding so be careful in those areas, especially if this passes close to western Mexico. It will cause some heavy rain and also like some rip current danger and some rough seas if this passes close to western Mexico. So you got a dual threat in eastern Mexico and western Mexico. So be careful those areas. The European ensembles are now showing some grayer signs in the Gulf there, in the Gulf Bay of Campeche. So earlier this week it was just showing a thing or two, as you saw in last videos, but now it's already showing this a little bit more support. And there's this blob of ensembles near the Gulf and the East Coast that we'll talk about in a moment. Something very interesting will happen near Florida next week. But first, let's see more about Investment 91L. So there's the global models and hurricane models. They take this right into eastern Mexico there. And the intensity guidance is still low, shows just around some tropical storm strength, but only like four members are showing tropical storm strength. The rest are just below. So we'll keep watching this, but because the current trends right now are indicating that this is organizing, but the model data is still somewhat uh, low on the probability of this becoming. But as you saw with the European model, it's showing more chance now for formation. And the H-Wharf hurricane model also did show something forming close to Mexico. But this intensity guidance here is kind of low still. But we might get a quick tropical storm. So let's see here. Like first, there's the GFS just to see if it has some. So it goes very quick. It barely shows anything there, but it does form into a hurricane in the Eastern Pacific, passing close to Mexico. The other system there, there's the European does show like those areas. This goes. It tries to organize it very quick, but then goes into Mexico and forms the other one on the Eastern Pacific. So. Just for curiosity, there's the icon too. Shows like this tries to organize, but the icon doesn't form anything in the Gulf. It just forms on the Eastern Pacific, another one there. But what's interesting is the hurricane models here. So the HR shows like this spins up near Mexico. This tries to spin up, but gets to 1002 millibars right before landfall. So Barry might come like very quick. The next name is Barry for the Atlantic, so it might try to appear very quick before landfall, according to the model. Because as you saw, the current trends that they are saying it's already trying to get a circulation. So if that happens, we might get a storm sooner. But we'll keep watching. Then it takes this into Mexico there. There's the halves A as well. Shows like this goes and the halves A barely does anything, so it doesn't show anything interesting. But the HUR for the invest on the Eastern Pacific does show there this goes passes close to Mexico, but takes a while to organize. So this goes and later does strengthen it into a hurricane and goes out to sea, but still kind of close to Mexico. So we'll keep watching those areas, but be careful. Before we take a look at the tropics in Florida next week, let's just see this severe weather today because it does look kind of concerning in some spots. So there's this light risk northern plains into the upper Midwest and those areas, and also slight risk on the East Coast near like northeast. So there's like some 5% tornado threat in Minnesota and to Wisconsin, South Dakota. So be careful in those areas. Last week we had a 5% and there were some tornadoes. So be weather aware there. And there's like this 2% surrounding it and 2% in New York, Massachusetts. So be careful in the northeast as well. There's wind, some 15% wind threat in both slight risks and 5% the marginal. And hail is kind of more concerning across Minnesota into South Dakota, some larger hail possible. So stay safe in those areas and also across South Dakota, Nebraska, into Wyoming as well. So be careful. Shows here scared. Severe thunderstorms are possible across parts of the upper Midwest to the north central Great Plains. All severe hazards are possible centered on Minnesota, east and South Dakota. Scared damaging gusts possible in parts of New York into Pennsylvania. And about that, we already have the severe thunderstorm watch in New York, there in Pennsylvania. There's some storms already happening. So be careful in those areas. Day two, there's this bigger slight risk across all the way from Kansas to Upper Michigan, and this marginal risk and also marginal on the East Coast. So there's less than 2% tornado threat for now, but tomorrow it might change. There's this wind threat, 5-15%, and some 5% hail too. So tomorrow is more like a wind day. So scared strong to severe storms possible Sunday, Central Plains to the Upper Great Lakes region, with some potential for evolution of a large organized severe storm cluster across parts mid to lower Missouri Valley, Central Plains to late afternoon, Sunday through Sunday night. So be aware those areas, especially some damaging winds possible. Day three is just marginal across Midwest to the East Coast. Scared storm severe storms possible across parts of the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic on Monday. So yeah, be aware. The fire threat is still elevated across the west, some spots in Idaho, Wyoming today, so be careful too. There's these models here for significant tornado parameter, the HER, it does show Minnesota some values close to like 1.6 this afternoon. Nothing too crazy, but later in the evening, it does increase in Minnesota to even like 3.6, the significant tornado parameter. So be careful. Those areas shows later Sunday, like this is right in the mid to late evening, shows some spots as high as 4 significant tornado parameters, some spots. So stay safe in those areas. be careful. And here shows like into South Dakota too, those areas in eastern South Dakota. Later in the evening into the night, right? It does decrease later into the night. But yeah, be careful those areas. And still like the early evening, late afternoon, it's not that high, but the show some 8-degree lapse rates southern Minnesota into South Dakota. So still more buoyancy in some spots, but in terms of Cape, does show like that same time in the evening close to 4,000 joules per kilograms in South Dakota. Those areas, more spots to 4,600. But in Minnesota, where like the severe threat is centered around Minnesota, shows just some 3,400. And 3,000 are a lot, like a lot. So be careful, those areas, some 3,700. Later into the evening does decrease some into the night, but still shows some a lot of Cape. So stay safe. Those areas, be careful. And here there's also the updraft list until Sunday afternoon. So does show the storms around central Minnesota and to eastern South Dakota, especially central southern Minnesota. Some stronger storms there by the herd. Does show finger two spots South Dakota too, especially like southwestern South Dakota finger two, especially in eastern South Dakota and to Minnesota. So be careful. Shows finger in Pennsylvania too. And yeah, but especially in Minnesota, this indicates some large hail. So stay safe in those areas. Be careful. And still like during the evening, like slightly earlier in the evening, the show is by once in the evening, not too much on the storm relatively still, but later by 3Z it does increase later in the evening, closer to 293 meters squared per second. So it does increase later in the evening, the storm relatively still for those supercells. So be careful those areas, and at the same time, like in eastern South Dakota and central Minnesota, some slightly higher supercell composite. So stay safe in those areas. Shows here like especially the herd across those areas, it shows north. So shows here into central to eastern Minnesota some very strong storms to start with. Shows the beginner storms close to some dangerous supercells in a spot or two, but like show some big cells. This like some large hail possible, and maybe a few tornadoes. These initial storms, depending on how it goes, because it's not guaranteed. But does show eastern South Dakota and to Minnesota some stronger cells. So this goes into the evening does grow in central eastern Minnesota as well, western South Dakotas, some storms too during the night in South Dakota. And tomorrow, Sunday, into Iowa shows a storm or two. Later in the evening, Sunday, those storms start in the plains there and still shows in the Midwest Sunday afternoon. But be careful this evening. Those storms might pack a punch. So stay safe, and the day 1 through 7 rainfall does highlight this area in the upper Gulf, close to 7 inches on the Florida coast. So we might have a very sneaky low pressure system there with some abundant rainfall. So, and even some tropical potential. So they show even like spots 5 to 7 inches on the Florida coast. And some more storms across eastern Canada, the Midwest, a few spots to 3 inches, and a few other spots. Most of Mexico already climbing to southern Arizona as the monsoon tries to sneak in. So be careful. There's this light risk. Missouri into Arkansas, excessive rainfall today. This marginal further north into West Texas, Florida, in this big area. There's day 2, Florida still, and from Texas to Michigan shows day 3, still a marginal, many areas. Day 4, from New Mexico to Maine. Day 5 in the Gulf and spots the Midwest to the Southwest. So be careful this rain. Does show some extreme heat risk on the East Coast till until next week. By Monday, the 30th shows on the west some extreme heat as well. Tuesday, Wednesday does get some moderate in the north there and does calm down later, but still a few spots of major heat risk. So be careful those areas. And now for this area in the Gulf into the southeast does show the European ensembles has slightly more support now, something off the east coast by late next week near July 4th. So it does show as well in the Gulf a few ensembles, but nothing too crazy. The GFS barely has anything in the Gulf, just further out the east coast. So the reason for this is like there's these storms in the US now, this goes and a lot of rain in the Gulf, but we might have this leftover frontal boundary there by later next week. They might try to spin up into something near Florida. So Tuesday and Wednesday, especially like Thursday, July 3rd into Friday, shows on July 4th, Friday, more storms in Florida there, those areas. So this might try to become something, but still not clear. There's low support still on the models, but there are some that try to form this. So here there's like the GFS shows those storms there in the Gulf. A few runs ago, it did try to form something like this run, July 6th. It takes the low pressure back into the Gulf. So it goes into Florida and then back into the Gulf and tries to form a low pressure there. And then right as it goes to Louisiana, shows a low pressure and then this goes away there. But we'll keep watching. The European AI model was interesting as well. It did show like something close to low pressure near Florida by July 4th. So shows like this rain there throughout July 2nd and everything. The show it tries to form something, but not really. A few runs ago, it shows more of a low pressure trying to form, but then it dissipates. So we'll keep watching. There's the 12Z from yesterday. It's interesting as well, and it does have like a lot of storm, especially July 3rd until July 5th there in Florida. It does try to get a low pressure. So regardless if this decides to become something or not, there'll be many storms and heavy rain next week there. So especially be careful with that, especially because some flooding possible. This rain shows like in inches here, so like rain shows until July 5th, for example, the European model has on the west coast of Florida places like Spring Hill and Cedar Key to 5 inches, especially like some 5 inches. Many areas, Apalachicola to some 3 inches, especially near the Big Bend, these areas. So there's the GFS, kind of scared on the GFS, but the GFS show like a spot in southern Florida to 7 inches. There's the icon more realistic across these areas. It has like 8 inches in Cedar Key from this. So please be careful those areas. And all the way south to Clearwater, it does have some 5 inches, 2 inches in Tampa, but just north of it, more than 5 inches. So please be careful spots further south as well. So especially this rain. And there's like some tropical cycle formation probabilities. So there's here on the European model. So like this one here. So for tropical storm, let's just put like Atlantic here. So shows the Bay of Campeche now some probabilities, and these probabilities now are all the way to 30 to 40% there. And last video I showed you was just like 5%, 5 to 10% the Gulf. So now the European has really uptrended. So this goes and starts showing on the East Coast near July 5th, some probabilities. But a few runs ago, it did show close to the Gulf. Let's put tropical depression probability. So tropical depression nearly to 70% on the European, the Bay of Campeche. So this goes shows there July 3rd in the Gulf. So as you can see over the southeast, close to 20 to 30% there in the Gulf, because the pink is like 5 to 10%, and the orange is 10 to 20. So close to 20 to 30%, a few areas by July 4th there in the northern Gulf. So this goes and does have even to like 30 to 40% near the southeast, grows to 40 to 50% chance of a tropical depression. And then this goes there. Does kind of come back west into the Gulf. Some others are curving it back west. So be aware, those areas, we'll keep watching this. And there's here like the Eastern Pacific again, because some recent model ones did show this kind of approaching Mexico. So the GFS forms, it gets close to the Baja, but doesn't really make landfall. And later by July 8th, the GFS has another one on the Eastern Pacific. So there's the European too, shows there it forms, and the European passes just west of the Baja, but it doesn't make landfall. But it might bring some heavy rain, rough surf there into Mexico. So stay safe in those areas. Be careful. There's like some outlooks for still day 6 through 10, those above average temperatures further east and slightly below average on the southwest, and later still many areas above average, but still showing around Arizona, New Mexico, day 6 to 10, some above average precipitation possible, especially because of the monsoon. Later, by the first, second week of July, lowers down a little bit, but still slightly above average. So keep watching those areas, and there's still this heat here across the southwest, some 109 degrees, 101, some 90s in the plains still. So still be careful of this heat in those areas. There's like during the night, shows slightly less in the Rockies, but still some 80s in Arizona during the night, and some 70s in the mid-south. But Sunday afternoon, alright, it shows to 113 again in Arizona, in the southwest. So stay safe in California. Some 90s in the valleys in California. During the night, still hot in those areas. And then it shows like still Monday afternoon, some 90s as far north as Washington, even close to 100. In some spots 115 in Arizona. I bet you like 116 or more, especially the heat indices. So it does show here like to 115 Phoenix and more areas. Some specific areas might be close to 116. And does show still 113 by Tuesday afternoon, some 100 in Utah, in the lower elevations. So yeah, be careful in those areas. Still by Tuesday afternoon, some 90s in the northern plains, in the southeast, more spots there. So be careful during the night, slightly less in the higher terrain, especially in Oregon, but still very hot in Arizona in those areas. By July 2nd, so 108 again, so 90s in the plains, southeast, 100s in the valleys there in California. So stay safe in those areas. Be careful. Some extreme heat warnings still present in Arizona, in Southern California. So red flag warnings in Wyoming. So some wind advisories, Montana. Nothing too crazy, but be careful, especially the extreme heat there in those areas. So in Canada, there's still, like I mentioned yesterday, those mild to hot temperatures, southern Canada. These are quite hot for you because Canada's very cold in the winter. So this is 27 degrees is already hot for you. So be careful, especially now in the summer. So shows like some 29 southern Ontario by Sunday afternoon, central Ontario and Quebec. More spots in northwestern Canada, slightly milder too. So does show in the western Rockies still colder British Columbia and those areas, but generally remains some areas mild and some areas hot, especially like in the south and central western areas by July 2nd, July 3rd, and still hot like Southern Saskatchewan, July 3rd, some spots to 35 degrees on the European model. So stay safe in those areas, be careful. The storms for today, Saturday, does show a risk around southern Manitoba of some 90 to 110 km per gust, some 50 millimeters of rain, and 3 to 5 centimeter hail with those storms and isolated funnel clouds in Alberta and Saskatchewan. So be careful. Those areas, there's in Ontario too, some chances southwestern Ontario for some moderate storms, some strong winds and hail as well, and some heavy rain too. In Quebec, kind of southern Quebec, some moderate storms, especially some heavy rain, gusty wind. So stay safe in those areas. British Columbia and Yukon, a storm or two, but nothing too crazy. And the show day two, Sunday in Quebec, nothing really that crazy. And in Ontario for Sunday, so the shift further east for Sunday in Ontario. So be careful those storms, and especially like still some large hail and some heavy rain in a few spots. So stay safe. And there's day two in the prairie still, like a funnel cloud or two and, and some hail, heavy rain. So stay safe and what just happened here. So be careful in those areas. In terms of rainfall, still shows like some spots in southern Quebec, close to 60 to 70 millimeters, in a spot or two, like 58. Some isolated spots just on 70 millimeters. So stay safe. Some storms with heavy rain. It shows rain practically all of eastern Canada next 5 days. Some spots in the south drier, but storms in the plains. And shows like even summer rain in Alaska and western Canada, those areas. So be aware. It does show in Mexico as this potential storm goes there. In eastern Mexico, a rate to 200 millimeters, 180, 100 and 210. So really be careful. Some flooding possible in those areas. The GFS is weaker with this, but still 218 millimeters. The icon only likes to show in the ocean, but it does show close to the coast, close to 150 millimeters. So stay safe, especially some flash flooding possible. It shows the coastal western Mexico as that storm passes close as well, more than 100 millimeters. So stay safe. And like most of central western Mexico, those storms like central to northern Mexico, some showers and storms, maybe a few stronger ones in the afternoon. So stay safe. Guatemala, southern Mexico, those rains continue and still stronger Costa Rica and Nicaragua, close to 100 millimeters. So stay safe. And the GFS insists on Nicaragua still to more than 140 millimeters in Costa Rica. And there's the icon more in the ocean there, but also southern Nicaragua should watch. And the icon has southern Mexico into Guatemala spots to more than 100 millimeters and spots western Mexico. So stay safe, especially some damaging wind and waves if the cyclone passes near the west coast. And those shock waves in the Atlantic still kind of hanging around there, but we'll have some more showers and a few thunderstorms in the southern Caribbean, but nothing too crazy. So here, like does show the satellite here, there are some shock waves in the Atlantic, but they're the monsoon trough itself is like extending all the way south to Colombia and Venezuela, curving kind of into the Eastern Caribbean, the Western Caribbean to the Eastern Pacific. So there are those long shock waves, but it's the main monsoon trough here. So be careful. You see like storms now in Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and also some storms in the Caribbean, some showers and storms. So be careful of these occasional storms as well. Jamaica, Cuba, the Eastern Caribbean, Hispaniola, especially Nicaragua and Costa Rica. So stay safe in those areas, and we'll keep watching for this Gulf low pressure next week, especially for the heavy rain threat. So stay safe. Just be careful to some storms in Canada too, but let's just make sure like snow, not really, just a finger or two in our central Nunavut and the Rockies near Alaska and Yukon, but nothing too crazy. So yeah, stay safe.